Easier to look at here is this. This is the assumption that they make. You see the prepayment, you see these dollars down here, and you see the other stuff up at the top as you kind of straight line it. I will tell you that the costs that I'm showing you here are actually higher than the costs that the economists offered because they didn't make any assumptions in terms of how you would actually repay the $100 million that you're going to make as a down payment. Now I realize that you folks may have that just sitting under the cushion somewhere, right? But we wanted to make sure that we at least had some information in terms of how you would repay those dollars over time. This is the cumulative cost over time, and these are the numbers that were offered in terms of the outcome. These are the water rates that will result. Those are large, incremental. These are the annual costs. These are in addition to what you're paying today. Let me be clear. The annual per capita cost, the cost per household. No one ever talks about those, right? These are about, per household per month, you're talking about 60, 70 bucks. Now, that's a lot of money per month. That's like, 800, 900 bucks a year, so I don't want to scoff at that, but, it's amazing how some of these numbers never kind of made it out. Now, these are those impact fees. Those are massive. Right? Those impact fees are really, really big. And the only reason why this impact fee is lower is because we carry it over more years, which means I can distribute it over more people who are building a home or an office building or an apartment complex or any of those things. Okay? So we look at supply versus demand here, right? And now we have to bring into this concept the Lake Powell pipeline project. Exactly the same analysis that I showed you previously, the only difference being that I've now added the Lake Powell pipeline to your supply curve. What jumps out at us almost immediately? Does it satisfy the water that you're going to need all the way through perpetuity? The answer to that question is no. Not even through our projection period. Does it get you a long way down the horizon? You bet that it does. And maybe we've been a little aggressive in terms of some of our assumptions. And maybe, as a group, we need to go back and revisit those over time. I'm not here to suggest that this is in any way definitive. What I am here to suggest that if all of the assumptions that we just looked at, and respecting the fact of what the economists did and borrowing from some of their good work and respecting the differences between what they did and what the Lake Powell Pipeline Act calls for, that we can kind of look at how this balance takes place. So if we come back here to our slides and we work our way through, I would like to talk to you about the model that we created to essentially look at the same thing. And there are really three big questions that we have to answer. This is not definitive, but we have to start thinking about some of these things. And I will warn you in advance, there's discomfort as we think through some of this, but nonetheless worthy of some discussion. There are three primary considerations when we think about water resources. One is reliability, two is capacity, and the third is conservation. And these are not in any order. I think some of us would say conservation is more important, and they play off one another. Capacity and reliability, certainly important, and if you don't have one, you very well may not have the other. But I do need to ask you this question. How much would you be willing to pay per gallon to ensure system reliability into the foreseeable future? Now, these are all shown in cents. So what this means is I'm not willing to pay anything. I'm willing to pay 1/10 of a penny, 1/4 of a penny, half a penny, 0.75 of a penny, I'm willing to pay a nickel, I'm willing to pay a dime, I'm willing to pay a quarter, or I'm willing to pay 50 cents for every gallon that I consume in order to ensure reliability. Let me ask you that question.
Is that a per 1,000 gallons?
No, this is per gallon. This is per gallon. What are you willing to pay? That's why I'm trying to make the numbers really small.
Is this in addition to what?
This is in addition to what you are paying today. I'm not going to sell you water for a penny a gallon. I refuse to do that, right? I'm being silly. But this is in addition to what you're paying today, trying to make it comparable to the other analysis. What's the average gallon? Okay, I've got to close it off because we have much to do and short period to get that done. Okay, so generally speaking, if we put this particular chart up, respecting the fact that we haven't looked at what these totals are or anything along those lines, this is just offered to give some type of order of magnitude, the group fell generally around 6. About a penny is what they'd be willing to pay for every gallon that they would consume. What is that? About 38% of the folks that are here today. Now I'd like to ask you the same question, and I imagine the answer is going to be a little bit different. How much would you be willing to pay per gallon to ensure Washington County has the ability to grow into the foreseeable future? All right, going once, going twice. Forgive me for being so brief. Folks, we only have about 20 minutes left and much to cover. Right, so if we looked at that, interestingly enough, okay, that even comes, I would have expected something different, but nonetheless, we'll respect that for a moment. Now, I'd like to ask you the question, what are you willing to pay per gallon for conservation? Again, we showed that conservation is not going to be free. We're going to have to pay for some of that, but let's take a look at these numbers as well. All right, 5, 4, 3, that's right. Answer now or forever hold your peace. Right? In terms of conservation, the number's about the same. All right, so sort of our threshold for paying is a penny. Maybe we skewed a little bit lower on conservation and growth than we did on reliability, and I think that probably makes sense. Again, I'm not here to suggest that a penny is the right number. I just wanted to get an idea of how these things contrasted with one another so that we can get it as bearing. Oh, look, I need to apparently update my Adobe. Right, we'll do that later. Oh boy. The Omen is now here with us. Whoa! I should have updated. That's good. That's good. Entertaining. Okay, who should bear the majority of the construction cost for the burden of the Lake Powell pipeline? Now this is the should growth pay for growth or should the community pay for growth overall kind of question. So again, this is just an idea for us to work through as we're going through this. So should it be existing ratepayers that should pay for that rate, or should it be new growth? Essentially, rates versus connection charges or impact rates. All right, come on, there's 2 of you, you're laggards. Oh, you're great, thank you. Right? Okay, so about 88% said that growth should pay for growth. So new construction should be more associated with impact fees than it is on rates. I think that's probably not terribly surprising to anyone sitting in the room, but perhaps some balance. I would also note that one additional thing came up in our research, and that is the Washington County Water Conservancy District owns a certain amount of property, right? And that's this purple area shown here. It's about 1,000 acres overall. There's been some discussion about the ability to sell that, to essentially pay for something like that $100 million down payment. I would like to know, should the sale of land be used to offset the capital cost of water infrastructure construction? Beautiful. You got all 16. Thank you for being so quick. All right, about 2/3 believe the answer that yes, there should be something sold. About 1/3 said no, shouldn't. So we have a little bit more division here in our ranks, and we'll keep that in mind as we move forward. Okay, when we think about the cost of construction, you all told me that growth should pay for growth. The overwhelming response was that. And so what I'd like to know is if we were going to distribute the cost of construction, okay, the cost of construction between impact fees, again, construction, and rates, which would be on the existing ratepayers or future ratepayers too, to be sure. What I'd like to know is, and I didn't know what the response to your question is, which is why I have the X's up there. What I would like to know is what percentage of the cost of that construction, if they should bear the majority, every one of these is above the majority, what percentage should growth bear?
Growth, no matter what we answer, what percent should growth bear?
Right, it's what growth, you already told me it should be greater than the average. Right? There's going to be somebody that wants a lower number, but unfortunately the masses put me here. It's 15. We got one more going once, twice. All right, I got to go. Right, here we go. All right, so the answer, the predominant answer was, wow, 48% of the responses is about 5. So somewhere between 70 and 75% of the total, this group is saying should be borne by essentially impact fees for the construction that says growth should pay for 75% of the capital construction. Who should bear the majority of the burden for the cost of conservation? Should that come, again, from residents? Should it also come from this new growth that we talked about before? All right, going once, going twice, 16, thank you so much. Oh, interesting, interesting. 50-50 split. Whoever you are, that 17th person, shame on you, right? Right? You missed your opportunity, right? So this is a 50-50 split. So we kind of believe, and this is really going to make the next slide very difficult, right? But we believe that it needs to be about a 50-50 split in terms of the cost of conservation. Very, very interesting here. So, and this isn't very hard. So let me just ask the question, and let's put it on those impact fees again, since it was a 50-50. How much of that, what burden should they bear of the total? Let's see where it comes out. So now again, we're only focusing on conservation, and I'd like to know if we have to pay about $10,000 an acre foot for conservation, who should bear, how much of that should be borne by impact fees? Oh, you guys got it already. You already have 13 answers. I didn't even finish the question. Thank you. All right, what do we have? Okay, all right, so essentially what we're saying here is the cost of conservation should be split roughly half between, maybe a little bit more, but roughly half between impact fees and ultimately rates, right? I mean, that's essentially what we're getting at. And I'm going to come back to this in just a moment, but I'd like to flip over to our model for a second. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate that. So let's just make some assumptions. Here, and these are all very important, right? Years to complete the Lake Powell pipeline. It's going to take you 4 or 5 years. Let's just make it 4 years for the moment in terms of when that construction would ultimately need to begin. And you'll notice here that we've actually, because of some of the assumptions we've made, we actually have to have that construction start in history. We actually needed to start 2009. Now we've probably been a little bit aggressive, so I'm going to come back over here and I'm going to go to our buffer right here for a moment, and I'm going to move our evaporation down to 5%, and I'm going to make some additional changes, largely because of some of the assumptions that we made relative to conservation. I just, we'll come back and adjust for these as we go forward, no doubt about that, but I'm going to have to bring them back so that the model, frankly, doesn't blow itself up. So here we go. Here's our construction timing. That at least moves us out to 2013. I'll make it 3 years, again, so our model doesn't blow up. At least we're in the current timeline. Here's our initial capital payment. Made the assumption here that we'll make this additional capital payment, and it's now in 2031. We'll have to come back and we'll have to address this. In terms of that initial capital payment, we said that the sale of land should be a percentage of that. I'm just going to make that 50%. For a moment, we said that more of this should go on, I'll make that 50%. We said more of that should go on growth in terms of impact fees, so I'll make this the other 40%, and then I'll make water rates only 10% of that total. And I'm using pay-go. Essentially, I mean I'm going to impose these starting immediately so we can pay them off. Now, I will warn you that because we are going to have to make a $96 million payment effectively in 2014 in order to do everything that we've just done here today, that's going to be a problem for us, right? We'll talk through that as we go, right?